people are watching. That's pretty great. All right, so welcome everyone. Richie Carlton here at Sunday. I'm the creator of fmtrain.tv, where we have great live stream videos and paid recorded content on the FileMaker platform. And last week we shipped FileMaker 19. We shipped it. FileMaker Claire shipped 19 on Wednesday, and we've been racing around trying to get all the maintenance releases lined up so they can go out, as well as the 19 training. And for those of you who've been downloading the video player and testing it out, so what we have is we put all that content in one video player, and what we have is I think we have the 18, we'll have the 18 and the 17 course probably loaded in there. The other courses down below, the little more legacy courses, we're going to add those, right, as as the weeks come on. But we have to we're reposting all that content to a different website, different provider, and so we have to, each video course is about 70, 80 gigabytes. And so almost, well, actually 100 gigabytes for 19. So people say, hey, can I download your course? 100 gigs. It's really big. It's really hard to download that much content. So that's why we generally don't do that. So today, today's kind of a basic day. It's a fill-in day for things that we were going to do about 3 or 4 days ago that got bumped because of 19. I want to show you a couple really cool things. So yesterday we were talking about the Deadbird database, my Deadbird repository. I'm going to fire it up real quick. I want to show you a trick or a tool. And I guess it's a little video we need to make. I guess I could make the video. In fact, we probably should make it, but I'll just give you kind of a heads up on this. So sometimes people have really bizarre behavior in FileMaker. And most of the time it's you did it to yourself. It's in your solution. It's your fault, okay? However, there are times where it's a bug in FileMaker. And then even more rare than that, it can be a problem on the specific computer. So if you have a bug on, say, I got a Mac here and a Mac here, I've got like 12 Macs. And say I have a bug on only one of the Macs, and the Macs have a similar configuration, or it's on Windows. Same thing with Windows, doesn't matter. It's Mac or Windows. But you have to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. You have this bug there. For example, I open a FileMaker file. Everywhere else it opens in 5 to 10 seconds or less. On this one machine, it takes a minute to open it. One of the things that you can do that's important to understand since FileMaker 15 is that FileMaker caches data on the local client. The local client can have corrupted data in its cached information. And really, in the world of FileMaker, of course, I've asked for this, but like I said, after 30 years, you quit telling your spouse to put the toilet seat down. Is that they need a button here that says clear the cache, but we don't have that. So, and when you say flush the cache in the script step, that's the RAM memory. I'm talking about the hidden files that are on the computer. So what I did is that we have this Deadbird database. I want to show this to you real quick because it'll be marginally inspiring. I'll go to recent. I'll say Deadbird repository. So these are all the, like I said, the junk drawer of things. I mean, like instructions on how to clear the cache. Where do you file that in your computer, right? So that's why we have the junk drawer here. So I'm going to put the word cache in here. And my engineers also put things in here. So that's some sort of server issue. This is a different really issue. Flushing cache can really slow performance. Yeah, so this goes back to that script set flush cache. Don't do it unnecessarily, okay? Don't just do it all the time because you think it's a good idea because it can really slow performance down. But this right here is really interesting because what this is these are the instructions. Let's see if I can get you this information, but there's instructions on how to find the cache files on Macs, and on Windows they're in a little bit different location. But the idea is that you can go in there and you can find these files. And on Mac, they're in 2 spots for sure. They may be on 2 spots on Windows. Hang on one second over here. Let me go over here. All right. And what I need him to do is come to this file here and give you folks these instructions. So what you do, the first thing you do is you go to the Go in the folder and you navigate to this specific folder. So you go to folder right here. You see that in the Finder. Then I'm going to paste that string and I'm going to say Go. It brings up this, basically it's a hidden directory on the Mac. And then you're going to come down to FileMaker, and then all these are cache files. So when we say that after starting with FileMaker 15, FileMaker saves down some of the structure and the schema, when you open up a file, it compares with a little mathematical formula to see if the things have changed. If it hasn't, then it will use the local cache data to get things spun up, to show the layout, to know the relational diagram. And then it'll get the data, the user data, off the server. because the data that's here generally is sometimes some of the thumbnails and container information. It'll save thumbnails here. It also saves the structure and scheme of the file. And so you can take all this, basically throw it away from these spots on Mac and Windows, restart your computer, and then FileMaker will go and say, hey, is there cache? Oh, no cache. I'm going to delete all the data down. So if the cache becomes damaged, one, FileMaker might not know it, and it gives you I was about to say erotic results, but that would not be true. It would be erratic results, not erotic results. And what it does is it will dump those in the trash. You dump in the trash, so it'll just recreate them, right? The problem is like I said, it'd be great if you press a button, it would just do it for you. But once again, after you yell about stuff, at some point you put the toilet seat down yourself, right? So that's what this webinar should be. Put the toilet seat down yourself. Moving along, so that is kind of your advanced tip for the day, clearing out your caches, but being smart enough to know that that might be the problem. Once again, if you have a specific piece of hardware where it's misbehaving, and you have other machines that have the same config and they're not doing it, then especially weirdness. And Garrett had it on Windows where it was throwing question marks into calculations. It just totally lost its mind. And he cleared that out, and it solved all the problems. And it was on a customer machine. The customer was obviously agitated. We got 50 computers, and this one is not working right, and FileMaker, what? So, all right, so we're going to go to File, create a new file. Once again, this is basic. Elzo and Stormtrooper and all you people, feel free to get yourself an adult beverage or just put me on in the background or leave. It won't hurt my feelings at all. We're going to create a blank new file. I'm going to say create. It's going to, if I'm connected to FileMaker Cloud 2, it's going to attempt to create the file on my cloud server. I just want to create it on my local computer. I'm going to call it if case, and we're just talking about if statements and case statements. So it's going to define a file here. I'm just going to put name on here. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to put city and state and just say OK. And then I don't know if I still have my, oh, I do. I still have my 500 here. All right, and just for entertainment value, I don't know if Bunny saw the import yesterday. I'm going to import some records here, Bunny, so I'm going to go through the process of that. I'm going to say record import from file right here. And then I'm going to find that file. This is a pre-canned set of 500 contact records with random people, right? And this is the fairly new, came out in 18, the import dialog. Notice that we're going to add records in here. And then so the idea is that you don't grab it and move it up and down anymore. You can't do that. It works differently. So these are, here's first name over here. I'm just going to go with first name. I'm going to click in here. And what it does allows me to select. Now this list could be really long because you could have hundreds of fields. So you have a little searchy thing here at the top, and we can just say name, and I'm going to put the name in there. So it puts the name in there, and then that other field was kind of removed out of the stack, right? If that makes sense. And then I have last name. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to say don't import this, and then company, don't import this, and address, don't import this. Then I have city. I do have a city here, so I'm going to click. I can click on it right there, do the search. I say city. And then I have the state. Now, what happens if I click on this? Notice it says to do not import. And so what the green ones are already mean that they already, the green ones are already on an import order. The hollow ones mean they're not going to be imported right now if we run it. So what I want to do is, the state is already set, but it's set incorrectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on state. It moves it up, and it turns on the import. So then if I click right here, we see that we're importing these three. Those don't have to import 4. That's fine. And then I'm going to say import, and it's going to do the import. If we have failures or problems, we'll get that information right here. And then now we have 500 records in here, which is really great. Okay. All right, cool. So what we're going to do here is that we need to talk about scripts. Now, an if statement or a case statement can go into a script or into a calculation field. I think you're going to find that you need to be able to use it in either case. I'm going to do it. I will do it in both places. I'm going to start with, let's just do it field definitions, because people are more likely to start with field definitions first. So what they'll do is they'll come over here, and let's say something really basic. So I'm going to go File, Manage Database. The keyboard shortcut for that is Command-Shift-D or Control-Alt-Delete or whatever it is on the Windows. But it's a left-hand, three-finger combination, like a Vulcan death grip you can do on your computer. And so my right hand is on my mouse, and it stays there. I'm right-handed. And my support, so my firing side hand is this hand. My support side hand, and for those of you who understand what I'm talking about, just laugh and giggle and just move on. So dominant hand, support side hand. My support side hand hovers over Command, Shift, and Control Alt on the left side of the keyboard, so I can do that with my left hand. So then I think about Command, Shift, Delete, or Command, Shift, Delete. Control Alt D for database, it just pops up the dialog. If I hit Escape, it closes it. If I hit Control Shift S, that pops the script workspace. We have no scripts yet. So those is, once again, training your left hand to be your friend. So we're in the database definitions here. We have tables, one table. Table should be called contacts. It took the name there from the file name. That's fine, whatever. And then fields, these are fields, relationships. There's no relationships. We're keeping it really basic. So let's say I want a field. And what I have are these, a lot of times I will create indicator fields that say are, like, for example, it's a indicator that, like, say we have this set of databases and we want all the West Coast databases because we're gonna say those records to the West Coast salesperson and the West Coast states, East Coast states. So we need a flag West, flag East. You could do it 5 or 10 different ways. I know a bunch of you, but I'm keeping this very simple. So whenever I have an indicator, like a 0-1 indicator, like a Boolean indicator, it's a 1 or 0, whatever, I always name them flag. And that's that habit goes back 25 plus years. And so we could say, like, you could have a record flag active like this. I could say Western customer contact, right? And so what we could do is you have this flag. Now, if you'd like it to be automatic, you have to change this to a calculation right here. So we're going to go, you're going to select it. It comes out as text or number or whatever. You're going to change it to a calculation. We're going to say change. It's going to say, are you sure you want to change this? Right? We say OK. Now, understand importantly that this is the calculation in the middle, and we have supporting pieces over here, supporting pieces over here, and at the bottom, what I normally do up front is I tell you to fix the bottom first. And the reason is because you'll work here, you'll build a formula, and you're going to be so eager to get the formula to test it to see if it works that you won't set the bottom, and the bottom can really screw you up. And so the output, prior to FileMaker 12, you could be pretty liberal about this. Starting with FileMaker 12, if you screw this up, it's really going to get in your face about it. So is it the result's going to be a number or text? In our case, it's a number, but it even could be a container. It could be like, if this equals this, then show this picture, right? Pretty cool. And so I'm going to say number, and then I'm going to say, now if. I want to do an if. Now over here are a list of all the, and that right there, by the way, is Monkey Bread doing whatever the hell it's doing. I'm not sure what it's doing. I didn't uninstall it from yesterday's broadcast. We left it in because yesterday was actually pretty neat. We did some cool stuff yesterday. And then I can, if my zoomy is working, it's working. So what I can do is I can scroll down here, I can make it a little bit bigger. And thanks to everyone here who helped me through that trying time yesterday. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to look for if. Now I could do the search up here, but I can't find it here, and you see this if. There's your if statement right there. So we're going to double click it. Now you can't see it, I put it over there. So I'm going to go back all the way out, and we see it up here. And so I'm going to zoom in over here, hopefully. And so what our test needs to be is if I come here, I want to say if the state equals, what you could do is you could do like this California, right? Now this color coding that you see here is all from the Monkey Bread plugin, which it's in free mode. I own a copy of it, but I haven't put the license key in, so you're seeing the free behavior of what it does for free. It does all sorts of great stuff. Really, it's quite cool. And so yeah, state is California, then the result would be, I could say it's a 1, or I could say it's a 0, okay? And so that's our calculation right there. Very basic, sorry. and I'm going to hit OK on the dialog. I hit OK over here. And so it's right here. It's a 0, 1. I go to browse mode, and I can flip through records. And obviously, most of these, whoop, there you go. There's a California right there. So if I zoom in here again, you can see that it is behaving as expectedly. Okay, so questions, comments, instructions for clearing cache. Miles putting that in there. Miles, please export the page file to PDF. The pages file. The pages file. What pages file? All right, Miles, hopefully you know what he's talking about. You know what he's talking about? The Stormtrooper about the pages file. Maybe, was there instructions in there? Was it pages? I don't know.
The file I put up was pages. I just changed it to PDF.
Yeah, you can't do that. Only about half the Mac people have pages and none of the Windows people have pages. So I have to slap you around a little bit. So yeah, the plugin is a free install. It has some free, so this is iMog asking if the Monkey Bread plugin is free. Christian Schmidt's the guy who does it, really great guy. He would prefer that you give him money. That being said, if you just drag and drop it into your computer, it does a couple really great things. You can see it color codes the calculations as you're monkeying around. Because here's the thing, you have to have balanced parentheses, right? So one of the rules in life, and this goes even for math and science, if you have a left parenthesis, there has to be a matching right parenthesis. If it's like this, notice it's red over there. I can't really see that. Notice red over here. Can't really see it, so the issue is that you have to balance it. If you try to hit OK and say compile, this is where FileMaker says you're not, it's a Lord of the Rings, you shall not pass, right? There we go. So movie references are always appreciated here. If you can come up with a good movie reference, then you can do that. Or a meme at any, probably can't post memes here, that'd be great. So I say OK. So I have to put the closing parentheses, and now it's happy, right? And I hit OK, and compiles, and then I hit OK, and it's there. So we have this. So once again, if we're up here, you see that like that. Pretty cool. Now, here's the rub. This is where it gets more interesting. If I go back to Script Workspace, or I use my keyboard shortcut, and I need to zoom out a little bit. What's going to happen is I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to Command-Shift-D. Go back to my calculation. Now, this is where it's a little more interesting, is that you say, well, what about all the other states? Because the Western United States is not just California. If you asked a majority of people in California, and those of you not in California will understand how funny this is, the Californians won't get it, and that's sad. But if you ask California, name the Western, state in the Western, the most important state in the West, in the country, they would say California, right? If you ask New Yorkers, they say the same thing. Never mind that California is just this one slice. It's just the attitude here is kind of funny. So what you need to do is you need to say, well, if it's New York or it's something else, then, so then you could say, well, you would say, or, right here, you could do or, and then you could say state. Once again, I come down here and I put state in, and I could say equals, and I could put California, I could put Oregon, right? So that's another way of doing it, right? Now, that will work just fine. You can't say, you can't do that. That would make sense. That looks great. It doesn't work that way in the world of programming. So you have to have the or you could put an and in here. Once again, if you're interested in the little operators, they're right in here, what you can do. You can say or, you can say and, you can say not, or not either, I guess, in that case. And so that's interesting right there. I don't think I've ever used that in 30 years, but that's not either one. So anyway, so that is what happens. Now, with if statements, you get into the situation, well, if it's California or Oregon, it's a 1, but maybe it's a 0, but maybe we would want to do another test for another condition, like maybe if the person's name is Richard, it's still like come up with this other criteria. It doesn't have, you always want it to make sense, but you could put another if statement in here. And this gets into what we would consider a nested if statement. So I'm going to make the dialog. Let me see if I can make the dialog a little bit smaller here. Go up here, over here, left. It's not going left. Let me go left now. Oh, that's because it's off the screen. There's my problem. All right, let's try that. So what we do is we're going to come over here, Now I could put if in over here in the search, and it comes up with that right there's that same statement. So I've embedded an if inside here, and I can have another test. I could say name equals, whoa, wrong field, name equals Richard, okay? And then it could be another 1, for example, or it could be a 2, right? So say if it's not, the conditions, you can do another test inside these results. And so you could have another test there, and then you could have, well, what if the name is something else and we want to do something else? So you get into this situation where it starts to look like this, and you have what they call nested ifs. And what I try to do is when you do this, I try to put a return key before the next if so you can kind of see it a little bit. But what ends up happening is it becomes really unwieldy. And this is where the case statement comes in, right? So the case statement is a way of instead of having these nested if statements, you can use a case statement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete it all. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say case, and there's the case statement right here. So what we do is the test is the same initially, right? We do a test, and then what it is that there's not really it fails straight into a second test. So what we do is we say if the state is California, and then the equivalent would have been or the state equals, this is the same thing, Oregon, okay? And then the next, the result could be a 1 right here, right? See that? There's the 1. Okay, so we put a 1 right there. Now, the next thing could be, now instead of saying if, the whole if structure, we can do another test right here. So this is where this would normally be the fail right here. Okay, so there's the fail, right? So I can set this up. This will work just fine the way it is. I'll hit OK. I hit OK, and then we have this over here. So if I come back over here, eventually we see California, it is working. If I come over here, this record, I say Oregon, it's going to work as well. So either one of those works. But in the case of the case statement, that's probably not a good use of words. Whoops, it's in field definitions. We could string in more conditions right here. So then we could say, well, what if the name, right? We could say name over here is Richard. And then you need to put your own, I always get track of these. And this is how dumb I am. I always don't worry about the official name. Either there's a colon or semicolon. Miles, is this a semicolon or the colon? I think it's a semicolon, right? With a little comma on it. That works.
Yeah, semicolon.
Yeah, I just use them. It's a little dot with a little comma underneath it, but it's a semicolon. So then we have, if it's true, then we could say Richard is a 2, okay? And then we could put another semicolon, and then we can do another test. We could say the name is IMOG, right? And then we could do another semicolon and have a condition for that. And then when you're finally at the end, you have to say if it doesn't meet any of these, just do something, and we could do quote, quote, which means nothing, right? Which means is you don't get anything. So that compiles, so that if we have this over here, we have that. And so notice that if I put Richard right here, what happens? All right, think about the calculation, right? So we're going to come back over here. We're going to have the how do I do that? Let me do it like this. Let me go I'm going to make a screenshot of it right here. I'm going to close it. I'm going to bring my screenshot over here, wherever it's at. That's a lot of Richard. Where's the screenshot? Yeah. Okay, I have to zoom out. I'm trying to zoom in, but now I am totally endlessly lost, and I don't know where the screenshot went. How come the screenshot's not on the desktop? Or is that it? Or this is it? Oh, this is it right here. I'm sorry. I was looking for something big. Okay, so let's zoom back over here. Have a little fun with this. Okay, zoom back in. Go to the preview. All right, so there's our formula right there. Maybe I can make that. I don't know if I can make this any smaller or not. Let me see here. Boy, it's really still pretty big. There we go. All right, so now you can see this is the calculation. You can see both at the same time. So notice that you have to read it left to right. State equals California, state equals Oregon, do a 1, okay? Now, when it actually hits a successful evaluation, it stops. That's the way this works. That's work. The if statement kind of works the same way. It stops at that first position, so it decides it's a 1. It never got to the point. So these are really in an order of priority. If it's this, do this. If this other thing, do this other thing. It's not a really good demo here, but in terms of practical business solution. But the idea is that it stops right here. Now, if I go to another state up here, now it wasn't New Jersey. New Jersey is not California, Oregon. So then it evaluates the second condition. And notice that it's not Richard, it's not 2, it's not an IBOG, it's not 3. So what if I change this to Richard? Okay. Well, that's a 2. But what if I change this to Oregon, right? Then what happens? It's going to go here, evaluate, stop at the 1, and that's what happens. So if it's not Oregon or California, I just say it's Indiana or something. And then it goes back to Richard, but what if Richard's not there? Then it's nothing. That goes all the way through to the end and evaluates the end. If I put IMOG, of course, it will be number 3. So questions, very basic. Yeah, so I don't use else if ELSA, so I don't use else if in calculation fields. Where it gets more interesting is when I'm writing scripts, you'll see me, like if I write a script, and so I'll come down and I'll say, once again, the if statement is here, but instead of it being, because there's an if function and an if script step, okay? So they work the same. This is an if, so this is the if name, right? Hopefully that's going to work. Name equals, or state equals California. Will that work? No, it didn't. It doesn't like it. So once you write it into a calculation, you have to evaluate it based upon the table occurrence you're on. And what it'll do is it puts the table occurrence that you're in and then the field, right? See that? So it evaluates it with that. So that's the difference between a calculation here and a calculation in a field definition, right? And normally if you select it from over here, it handles it automatically. So we say California is okay. Then down here we could say beep or do something or set a field. Set a field, right? The target result would be our flag, and some of you are already cringing because you know bad things are going to happen. But we could say it's a 1. Okay, so this is kind of the basic, the same kind of thing right here. And so what's interesting about this is that in order for us to set this field, this is a calculation, we can't set it. I don't know if we run the script, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It doesn't do anything, right? Remember yesterday we were doing error trapping, right? And so it can't set it. But I guarantee there's an error here. So what I want to do is I want to go to script debugger because if we run this, and then once you run this, it's going to run this in the context of your active window, right? So you're going to hit play. We're going to step down here. I'm going to zoom out so we can kind of see the bottom of this thing, okay? And if I step down, we're looking down here for that last error, right? So we care. Okay. Oh, it wasn't even California. That was my problem. Yeah, I never got there, right? So I'm being stupid. If we go back to California, so right here is where we would run it again. Try that. Let's see if it lets us do that. Did it run? Yeah, it run. Is the script debugger open? It wasn't open. Yeah, so it's not showing an error in this case. We come down. Okay, what is it? Oh, it's name. Gosh, you guys need to stop me when I do stupid stuff, Miles. Miles has left me. He's gone.
No, I'm here. I'm just
watching me do stupid things. So sorry about that. Okay, so here, I was going to want to save it. Okay, here's your error message right here. So it kept jumping down and not evaluating this. But what happens is if we go through it with the script debugger, you're going to see that if I run it, I step in. Once again, the highlighted is the item that will run next when I press this button right here. And then I'm watching down here for that error. I step down. It displays the error to the end user. I hit OK. And then it displays it here. And remember, yesterday's trick was to suppress the error messages to the end user by using the set error capture on. So it doesn't suppress them to you. It just suppresses the dialogues to the user. So when you say error capture on, it's really suppress end user error messaging. Okay, so that's the error. Remember I said 401 and 101 yesterday, and then 201 is that fields cannot be modified because it's a calculation. So we have to come over here, File, Manage, Database. Right here, we're going to change it back to a number or text. We say save. It keeps the value that was been calculated in there. But let's just say that I'm going to clear it and then say we're going to run this, right? So if we just run it real quick, it's going to save all, and then it runs it. Because I am not saving the script. If I run it, it just runs straight through. So that's an if statement here. Where you start to see the else ifs is kind of, an else if is like a case. It really kind of is. So, because remember the idea with a case statement is evaluation and a positive, and then evaluation and a positive. And that's really, so an else if right here is where you could evaluate something else. Remember the calculation we had before? We have that screenshot down here. See, it does this one, and it does that. If it fails that, it keeps evaluating. That's the way the case statement. So this is what works inside of a calculation function. These are script steps. So the else if allows you to, is like a case. This is the next test. So I could say name. Actually, what do we say? State. Okay, say state. It puts in the relationship right there for me. Equals. Well, actually, it's not state in this case. It's the name equals Richard, right? So that I'll just say name equals Richard, and then close quote. I'm going to take this line right here. I'm going to hit Command D and duplicate it. Bring it down here. I'm going to set the value to 2. Hit the enter key. So that's number 2. Then this one here to be correct would be or. Then I'm just going to copy this over here, paste it over here, and I would say or. So this right here, this line of code, or this 10 lines or 11 lines of code is the same as this one script step. The difference between this one and this one is this one will run automatically when it feels like it. This one only runs when you want to tell it to specifically run. Actually, and if we did it all the way, I would duplicate here, and I would just say imog is 3. So now it's actually fully equivalent. Now the cool part, this is a little bit longer, a little bit more verbose, but the difference is here is that when you get into performance, and this was back to Cameron's question, with scripts, if you control the script, you control when it runs. It doesn't run automatically in the background when you don't want it to run. Summary fields run all the time when you don't want them to run. And that really can slow down the performance of your FileMaker file. So that's kind of the trick with this. You definitely want to have this run manually on a button or maybe on a script trigger, but it doesn't run all the time. If this was a unstored calculation over here, it was unstored. We cover that in those performance videos. We've covered it in previous live streams. But if it was an unstored calculation, every time you display the record, the calculation would run. Well, if these have already been evaluated, like say this one has not been evaluated. So we get up here and there's an imog over here, right? Say it hasn't been evaluated yet. You would want to come over here, have a button, and you would run it. So you could put a button here. And I'm assuming Bunny knows how buttons work. Here's a button right here. We make a button. We could say test for region or whatever. And then the button initially does nothing. Instead, we're going to perform a script. We're going to go over here. We're going to run the one script that we called new script. There's only one script in there. I'm going to come down here and say OK. I'm going to close it to browse mode with my keyboard shortcut. Now, notice it doesn't say anything, but it hasn't been tested or evaluated. I say test for region, and it should work. And why is it not working? Did I not? Oh, I didn't save the script. Huh? Save the script. That's always helpful. Okay. So it only runs when we specifically tell it to run. Fields can't be modified because the flag is a calculation, not a number. That's correct. That's why we couldn't. Yeah, a lot of people. Michael provides a really great comment over here. He says, "I just use the case statement all the time." That's a true. If you're a more advanced developer, yeah, you just use the case statement all the time because it's just generally more flexible. But historically, in terms of programming in the old days, it was always an if statement. And case, I don't want to say case is a fairly new creation, but if statement was created in '93 in FileMaker. It didn't exist initially. How do we build solutions without an if statement? Well, the solutions were not nearly as advanced, right? Then they added case probably 4 or 5 years after that, and that's what we've been using ever since. Christian Jesse says, when a calculation executed, data is displayed or evaluating the background so the result is ready, could be interesting for a complex calc with a large amount of data. See, here's the thing. If you have a if you could have a stored calculation, that would generally be okay. Stored calculations are okay. The problem is that you're going to run into a calculation where you're using related data. And as soon as it's related data, it cannot be stored, which means it can only be evaluated at the time it's displayed. So I'm going to say that again. Say that my evaluation here goes and gets data from another table and says, if the state equals this other state that's over here in this other table, then do this. It cannot be a stored calculation. It just cannot be. That's another conversation, but it cannot be a stored calculation. That means it's unstored, which means the system only generates it just to show it to you when you need to see it. Well, if it's on every line item of a million line items, it's going to just spin and spin and spin. So the idea is to basically, and this is really an important thing about what I'm going to, I had this epiphany. As you start to be an instructor, you start to have epiphanies about stuff. And I had this epiphany to articulate this way about 2-3 months ago. And I've been doing this for how long? When you're this person right here, this is Bunny, okay? And maybe some of you, and I'm not picking on you at all, okay? Because I'm going to be dead in 30 years or whatever it is, 40 years, and Bunny will be the senior trainer in the world of FileMaker, or whatever it's called at that point, okay? And so, but everyone starts somewhere. And so this is her, and for her to get anything to work, it's a success. It's a total success. If she can get any calculation to run the way she wants, she is excited. Even though there's 5 or 10 ways to do something, she's going to use the first one that comes that she can find. And fundamentally, when you create calculations in field definitions and they're stored and unstored, etc., like that, first she'll create stored ones, then she'll get creative. She'll start connecting related data. She gets a little more advanced. So she's over kind of in this area over here is her professional skills. And then she creates related, then she has to have them unstored. And then right in here somewhere, the solution goes really slow if she has a lot of data and a lot of users. And that's because she used the first technique that she could make work. Not necessarily the fast technique. She didn't care about fast, nor should she care about fast. She just wants it to work and be successful. Because if you're playing in a solution and you're not successful, you're going to delete that thing, throw it away, and get some other product, okay? And so she makes it work. Pats on the back. It's awesome, right? Great. And then she builds it. It starts going slow because she's using these bad techniques that she learned that were great for her, but they don't scale to large users. This group of people right here are learning how to take their calculations and the summary fields and things like that, remove them out of the field definitions, and put them into scripts. And that's how basically Starting Point is built. Starting Point is built where we took most of the calculations out. They're in scripts. We trigger them at appropriate times. And so it makes for a database. Starting Point, we tested it last year with 391 people. Crap out of it on a cloud server. Some of you may or may not have been there or heard about that. There's a recording of it in our training. If you're interested, Miles can find it for you. And so what happens is that you learn how to do it right here. Then, what's the difference between this and this? Then you realize that you can put everything in scripts, and it's much faster, but there's still some areas that you can make go faster. That's lean design. That's the Nick Hunter area, where even I learned some stuff. I live here most of the time. I mean, I can do things over here, but it's like FileMaker is like, you ever heard this term, and for those of you who don't like American baseball, but they have this term like inside baseball. There used to be a TV show called Inside Baseball. And they would, or inside the world of football. If you're a professional American football or professional European soccer, and you understand really what the coaches are not about, oh, try hard, don't give up. That's what you do when you're playing a soccer coach and your kid's a kindergartner and they're 3 years old. When you're talking professional, millions of dollars, the complexity of those sports blows your mind. And so those are like the secret inside stuff that most people watch TV. Oh, that dude dropped the ball. He's a stoner. He's a loser. Nah, man, it's like all this other, 100 things. The coach sees the football field and the players are all hitting and running into each other, whatever, and they stop and they're watching all 11 people on both sides. I think it's 11. on both sides. Doing their own thing, and they can see that, and they see it unfolding, and they see things that we don't see. That's Nick and FileMaker, and that's what Nick tries to help you with over here. So he gives you the little secret hidden tricks to make it go even faster. So this is Bunny. This is probably IMOG over here as he gets over here. And then some of you, like TK556, I guarantee TK55678 is either here or in here. I can't tell where just yet, but he sent me some bugs that only a senior person would really know about in terms of our video player. He basically hacked the video player and ripped the data out of it, which was really awesome because then we know how to fix it before we ship it to the public. But basically what you do is you run a script, or what you do is you actually can, with a script, the easiest way from your perspective is have a layout, a special layout where you put the summary fields on the layout, okay? Summary fields won't evaluate unless you go to where they're at. So you go to them on that layout, and then you tell a script that take that value and set it. So the script knows to go there, the summary fields calculate, then it does a set field, and it sets it into a text or number field, right? I mean, once you trigger a summary field, it's going to go slow. The point is for you to trigger it at the time and location of your choosing, not when the user is all mad and they're desperately trying to get something done. You want it to run on the server, on PSOS. You want it to run in the middle of the night. Whenever people aren't around, they'll notice it. Or maybe on a dedicated robot machine that does it on the side, like a Mac or Windows machine that's running pro, and it's just doing math for you all the time on its own. But since it's there and no one's staring at it, waiting for it to finish, it can, like we have robot processes, like, for example, some of you, this is a great one, some of you hire our coaches. When you hire our coaches, you pay through PayPal. PayPal gets that information. Our robot will go and reconcile between PayPal and our FileMaker system once an hour. And so when you pay, over the course of the next 60 minutes, at some point, the robot's going to talk to PayPal, figure out that you paid. It's going to mark things as paid. Then it's going to send a Slack message and an email to the engineer letting them know that you paid and that they can start working on your stuff. And so that's a robot machine that runs it, because I don't want people to sit there and stare at a beach ball as it compares 100, say we have 100 outstanding invoices at any given time. And you have to watch it, each one for it to do the communication to PayPal might be 3 or 4 seconds. If you want to wait for one of those, that's fine. If you want to wait 60, 80, 100 of those, that's 5 or 6 minutes of it spinning. So that's why you have robot machines. Yeah, correct. IMOG's got it right. So you put summary fields on a layout. Your script goes to that layout, takes those values, puts them in the number fields, and then your script comes back to where it was. The people never even know they went there, right? It's all transparent. But now that data is cached in number fields or wherever. And so when the user goes to that, it just displays those numbers instantly, because they're numbered. They were already calculated and they're saved as a number field, right? You don't want them going there and having this summary progress bar going, or from your perspective, it's left or right, this way across, right? Okay, so K. Turley is repeating why a number result versus text. What about assigning a region to all states in case? Okay, so I can't remember K. Turley. I hate saying K. Turley, but where is he? I'm just trying to always use people's real names, but I feel like it's Ken from Albuquerque. All right, Ken. So one, why not use other techniques? Okay, first off, let me admit that there's probably 5 to 10 techniques to do this with a wide variety of calculations. I showed the most common ones. It doesn't mean that the other ones are invalid. These are just the most common ones that you will see people use, okay? Why a number result versus text? A number result, storing a number in FileMaker will generate higher performance if you're dealing with millions of records, okay, period. A text result is like why UUID versus UUID number. A UUID function is a random kind of serial number, but it includes alpha characters and number characters. And if you have a million records that are using UUID versus UUID number, which is the same thing but just only with numbers, the number one runs faster. FileMaker will handle that when you're dealing with large volumes of data. Once again, performance and scalability. It deals with numbers faster. I'm not sure how much faster. I would say at least 10% to 20% faster in volume. Depends on what you're doing. If you have 500 records or 10 or 50,000 records or even probably 100,000 records, I don't know you can tell the difference. But at some point, you can tell the difference in that. Certainly in this demo, there's no way we would ever tell the difference. It would not scale. If I was going to, okay, for performance, so I will give Ken from Albuquerque one final thing on this topic. If I was going to do this and it was going to have to scale, I would write the calculation. I would write the calculation in a calculation in the database in here. Only, and this is a lean design thing. If I didn't know this, I would do it over in scripts and run it with a script with a trigger. Okay, nothing wrong with that. Strictly speaking, I would write it over here, and I would write it as a number, but I would put the calculation to an auto enter. I would put it into an auto enter like that is what I would do, and that way it only runs if something trips it right there. Otherwise, it never runs. The problem is I can't call it manually when here. So in here, potentially performance is better. Nick loves auto enters. It's better performance in here, but you can't force it to run with a script button. The way it knows to run is that one of the things in the calculation changed. Did I not save that? Not that. I did not save that. Oh, here it is. I don't know. I'm confused. It should save. So if I have this right here, I say okay. I say do not replace any values. I say okay. Okay, there it is. So the way this will fire, it knows to fire is that if it sees that change, if that any of the referenced items change, like I said, if referenced items right here, if the name changes on this record or the state changes on this record, it will fire for me automatically. It won't, but there's no manual process unless I go into state and I change it and put it back. There's no manual process to trigger this. Also, here we go, is if there's related data in here, like some other value somewhere else, and it changes like in another table, it won't fire. So if you have any dependencies upon this outside of this table, then it has to be a calculation. It has to be manually activated based upon your criteria over here. So those are the advanced decision making for Ken. Okay, but it depends on the situation. It's always situationally dependent. Once again, it's situationally dependent. Once again, she's going to apply one method to the whole thing. I'm going to this is the middle person. They're going to apply scripts to the whole thing, and this person here will vacillate between auto enter and or scripts based upon the situation, because they know that auto enter can beat a script under a lot of conditions. However, if it's dependent to be activated based upon related data, an auto enter will never fire. Therefore, in that case, you cannot use an auto enter. So there you go. So you guys wanted basic, and then we got really deep because Ken wanted that information. IMOG calls should be calculations. I'm missing the conversation. IMOG explained a spreadsheet is doing calls. The database actually organizes the data. Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that analogy. Yeah, so I mean, listen, Ken, if you have like questions about this in a very serious sort of way, and maybe we can come back and collect those, but send me an email because we're already an hour and 10 minutes. I'm still going here. It's on a Sunday, right? So do me a favor, send an email to support, attention Richard, about this, and we will roll this up. So other questions, Miles, I didn't catch. Jesse, there are a lot of reasons not to use Excel. Yeah, well, Excel doesn't, let's start with the fact that the biggest reason, okay, assuming that Excel could do the stuff FileMaker could do, like locally, Excel's not a shared solution, right? Excel can't, you can't have 100 people sharing an Excel table, and then if someone changes one cell, it repopulates on all the other cells in real time and does conflict resolution. Excel doesn't do that. Excel's not a share. Excel allows you to visually see what tables in a database look like. But but it doesn't share the solution, etc. I mean, if you could open Excel, share it, and if you made a change in cell 1, and then within a half a second someone else had their screen update and change it, yeah, that would be a pretty amazing feature. And then that would, for some solutions, that would take FileMaker out of the running on that. But then it has to. Then you have a database, and Microsoft, guess what, already has databases. They have Access, which is kind of the throwaway free database. And then if you start doing serious work with Access, they always tell you, well, why don't you take your database and migrate it into SQL, where they make money on it, right? Okay, so there's a conversation. Yeah, interesting conversation, totally separate to what I'm going on here. There's a TK55678 IMOG. From a boss perspective, your boss is probably worried about who will maintain the database. The company data is on a system that only one person can handle. It's too risky. Yeah, so and so this gets back to this person over here. You don't want tribal knowledge. So if you build a solution and you're the only one who knows how it works, or how things work in it, then that's tribal knowledge. And then if you go away, which eventually, a lot of people go away. I have some lifetime employees and people that work for RCC, but some people go away, and when they do, you want to make sure that when they go out the door, they don't take the only known knowledge with them. It's kind of a problem. Yeah, so Ken, yeah. No, I just wasn't. It looked like you were getting a little aggravated because I somehow missed your question. But no, it's yeah. So best. So the best. So once again, remind. So I kind of hammered it, Ken. I think hopefully, and once again, there's this delay here. So I'm saying it, and so it's a little bit of out of sequence. But yeah, this is the conversation from today. Then the part where we scripted is here, and then deciding between auto enter calcs and a script is where you get into this conversation, because auto enter calcs we really don't even deal with over here, because most people, why do an auto enter calc when you can just write a calculation? The beginning person doesn't even, like for the most part, doesn't understand that, and so they just carpet bomb it and always know that it'll be fired on, right, or fired up. Problem is it doesn't work that way. Cool. So yeah, so wow, 70 minutes in the stream. Bunny. Yeah, Bunny, and so tomorrow, Bunny, you're going to be presenting everything today I did to show that you learned everything and that you were paying attention and making notes on your notepad, right? So, because if you were a good student, you'd be making lots of notes. I'd have, pages with notes on it like that, pages with lots of notes on it. Probably can't see the notes. The notes are on there. But, so hopefully you were taking notes and you're ready to present tomorrow that material. Miles, questions? We good?
I think we're good. Yeah, covered a lot.
I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected the quarterback. Great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Try to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap. Stands in, throws it left for Amendola. Reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside the 10. Rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.